Man, I am so pumped for today's episode because I got to sit down with Anthony Robles, National Wrestling Hall of Famer, ESPN analyst, best-selling author, and subject of the new film Unstoppable on Amazon Prime. Born with one leg, Anthony never saw that as a limitation and went on to become an NCAA wrestling champion. In this episode, we talk about training the mind, controlling your attitude, and how to show up as your best self, even when the odds are against you. This is one of those conversations that sticks with you. Let's get started. Anthony Robles, thank you so much for joining us on the No Gray Areas podcast. I'm so excited about this. I know you have limited time. You are a busy, busy guy. But let me just jump right in then and ask you, looking back, what was one of the hardest choices you had to make, and how did that shape who you are today?
I would say the hardest choice that I had to make was, one of them was whether or not to go to Arizona State University. You know, coming out of college, I had one Division I wrestling scholarship offer, and that was to Drexel University. And, you know, the coach there was amazing. I met the team, and they were great guys, and it all sounded just perfect on paper. You know, it was the one school that believed in me and gave me a shot. And so to turn that down, a lot of people thought I was crazy. Even in my own mind, I thought I was crazy. But I made that decision because I wanted to stay close to my family. You know, I felt like they needed me. I needed to support them. But also along the way, I realized that I needed their support. I needed to lean on them. And so that decision, it was difficult. You know, I second guessed myself at times, but looking back now, man, it's made me who I am. It's given me the people in my life who are still close to me to this day, my circle of people. And it's just blessed me in so many ways. So tough decision, but I'm grateful for the decision I made.
Yeah. You know, people that watch the Unstoppable movie or have read your book or have seen you on social media or anywhere else, they know, they realize, and I said this in the intro, you were born with one leg, but you never saw that as a limitation. Where did that mindset come from? Was that your parents? Was that a coach? Was that you? Were you just born with that drive?
Well, it definitely started with my mom, you know, because my mom, when I was born this way, basically the doctors and everyone at the hospital were telling her what I wouldn't be able to do, you know, that I would need full-time care the rest of my life. And so pretty much they just set me up with low expectations from the very beginning. But my mom, she refused to think that way. You know, her mentality was, no, we're going to figure it out. I'm going to teach him to find a way. And so growing up, I didn't have any other choice in my household but to figure things out. You know, I wasn't allowed to make an excuse because I was missing a leg or, you know, feel sorry for myself. It's like, no, you can do this. Let's just make some adjustments. So it started with my mom, but then as I got into wrestling, my coaches really did a great job of echoing my mom's words in their own way. You know, my high school coach, Bobby Williams at Mesa High, he used to tell me, we're going to focus on your strengths and camouflage your weaknesses. He said, you know, all your opponents and your coaches are thinking about what you don't have, what you can't do, you know, how your balance is going to suffer. Us, you know, you're on crutches all the time. You're going to have a strong upper body. You're going to have a strong grip. We're going to build a style around that. So it's just the two of them and then just the people that came in around that really just helped to enforce that mentality of you never make an excuse for yourself. Yeah. You know, you find a solution, you find a way because there's always a way. Yeah. You know, it's not going to be easy, but there's always a way through.
Man, Anthony, I love that so much because I think that fits all of life, doesn't it? I'm a huge believer, like the Strength Finder, that's a personality test. And one of their big mantras was excel at your strengths and manage your weaknesses. But we're always taught, or most often are taught the opposite. Like we go to school and we have 4 A's, 1 B, and 1 D on our report card. Everybody's like, focus on the D, focus on it. Instead of saying, what do you do really well? How are you gifted and wired? And focus on that. And that's kind of what you were hearing then growing up from your coach.
100%. You know, it's a matter of doing the best with what you have. Yeah. You know, giving your very best effort. And at the end of the day, that's the only thing that you can control, you know, is your attitude, it's your approach, it's your effort into everything that you do. Yeah. So if you can walk away, you know, it's great to set a goal. It's great to accomplish the goal, but you know, let's be real. Sometimes you're not going to always reach it. Yeah. You know, sometimes you are going to get a loss. You are going to get knocked down. But, you know, if you can get back up and, you know, maybe walk away from that loss, just knowing, you know what, I did everything I could. You know, I gave it everything I had. Then that to me is what's to be celebrated. You know, it's just like I gave my most, I maxed out, you know, my every effort to do this. And, you know, if I fell short, I fell short. But at least I know, you know, that's everything.
Yeah. You talk about attitude, right? And you're right. Attitude is the one thing you can control. The older I get, the more I realize there's so much in life I can't control. But that's easy to write on a coffee cup, right? You can control your attitude. Tell us about one of your lowest points and how you had to work through having the right attitude toward that. It probably wasn't overnight, but tell us about one of those moments.
I'd say a low point for me when I was wrestling in college, My junior year, I finished seventh place, and I was projected as a possible winner that year. So it broke me, that it was like, man, I put all this time and effort into something. I fell way shorter than I expected. And it's like, I have another year, but man, you got to put everything in. You got to go all out all over again just for a possible chance, at your goal. So that was frustrating and it was disheartening. But what helped me through it was, setting up smaller goals for myself along the way. So for my senior year, it's like, yeah, my ultimate goal is winning a national title, getting that bracket. But you know what? My goal for practice today is to get 5 takedowns, or it's to defend this 5 times. Just to have those little goals to where you can track your progress and celebrate those little victories. I think that's something we don't do enough. It's like, we set the end goal, where we want to get to, and we just take off for it, not realizing how far, we're going along the way. And so just, if you can take those moments along the way and just remember how far you're going, how far you come, that's going to give you that energy to fight through those times where you're like, man, I'm not there yet, or man, I messed up again, or I lost again. It's like, yeah, it's okay. But look how far the ground you've covered.
Yeah.
So my senior year, just being able to do that and just kind of go back and say, okay, I'm improving here. I'm doing this better. I'm checking these boxes off every single day.
Yeah.
That kept me in the fight.
Yeah. Anthony, I talked to a therapist a while ago who worked with type A people, like really driven people. And he said one of the main reasons he had them on the couch often was because they didn't learn to celebrate the small wins. And that's kind of what you're talking about, isn't it? Where they had these lofty goals, and sometimes they got to a point where they just crashed and burned because they didn't celebrate these little wins along the way. And that's what you're talking about, that helped you move through the disappointment of getting 7th place your junior year.
It absolutely is. It all goes back to the mindset, to that mentality. And it's like, if you think of a wrestling match in college, it's 7 minutes. It's 7 minutes. It's broken up into 3 periods. There's a lot that can happen during that time. You could win 6 positions in a row, and all of a sudden you lose the 7th. And then if you allow your mind to dwell on that 7th situation that you lost, well, what about the rest of the match? You just go downhill from there. It's like, no, you focus on the things that are going right. You focus on the things that you've already done, and that's going to help power you through it.
Yeah.
That's where the energy comes from. It's not the negative stuff. It's not just focus on what the defeat. It's like, just let's keep going.
Yeah.
I'm okay. This is part of the process.
Yeah.
That's something my coach used to tell you all the time. You got to trust the process.
Yeah.
It's not fun all the time. It's not easy all the time, but that's how you get there. Trust the process, go through the grind.
I'm a person of faith, and I actually believe that's what God calls us to as well, that it's the process, it's the journey. I'm a driven person, and I spend so much of my life so focused on the end goals that I sometimes miss the journey. I'm trying to do a lot better in my life now on focusing on the journey and the process, like you're talking about. Now, you mentioned that you coach now, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you enjoy coaching more or competing more? Because you don't compete anymore, right? Other than with probably some of your athletes, you get out there still. But do you miss competing, or do you like coaching just as much or more?
I think that competition bug's always going to be there. I love competition. I love competing, but I love coaching. It's so much fun to be able to impact my high school kids, my high school team now, like my coaches did for me. And but I feel like I approach it with the same mentality as I did as a competitor. Now that I'm a coach, it's like when I was wrestling, it's like, okay, how can I beat my opponent? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Where can I, and now as a coach, it's like, okay, how can I inspire my athlete? How can I impact them? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What's their biggest challenge? Is it mental? Is it physical? Where's their mindset at? So, it's taking that approach, and, it's kind of interesting being a coach now. I feel like I ride the highs and the lows just the same with my team, with my kids. When they're winning and when they're happy, it's like we're up. When they're down, it's like I'm down there with them. I'm hurting with them. So that part didn't change at all.
Yeah. It's funny because I used to compete in athletics, not near the level you did. And then I coached as well at a high school level. And I always tell people what I didn't like about coaching is the highs are so high and the lows are so low. So I coached basketball. You come back after one, you'd have a big win, hit a last second, and you can't sleep that night because, the adrenaline's still pumping. The next night, you can't break the press and you lose by 20 and you can't sleep that night because you're down, right? So you deal with those highs and lows now, don't you?
Oh, absolutely do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, well, let me ask you, because I know some of our listeners and myself, I catch myself believing these false beliefs sometimes. I think a lot of people feel disqualified before they even start.
Mhm.
What would you say to someone who feels like the odds are stacked against them? And this is great coming against you because that's just part of your life story. In some ways, the odds were stacked against you, and you could have disqualified yourself, but you didn't. What would you say to someone who's like, I don't even know how to start. It just seems like everything's against me.
I can absolutely relate to that. That's something I've been dealing with my entire life. And, one thing I would say, it's like for everyone out there, you're all in your own wrestling match. You're all facing your own opponent that you have to compete with on your mat of life, on that wrestling mat of life. And so really check your mindset, check your approach because, if you walk into a wrestling match, say you're standing right there on the edge, you're waiting to get called to center to wrestle the next challenge, right? If you're just focused on what the challenge is good at, what their strengths are, how they can beat you, what they're better at than you, you're setting yourself up for failure. Or you can choose to say, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is what I've been training. These are the areas where I can win. Then you're setting yourself up to be successful. So, if you're dealing with something, and everyone deals with something, everyone has their setbacks, their challenges. Mine happened to be a physical one, but everyone has something. It's going to be there, but you can't control that. But force your mind and, make a list. Force your mind to focus on your opportunities, your strengths, your blessings. What can you utilize to your advantage at that moment? And just build on that, expand on it. If you can do that, you can overcome it. It's not going to be easy, but the more you do it, the more you fight, the more opportunities are going to present themselves. The more support is going to come around you. And then before you know it, it's going to just start get that momentum for you to really start taking over in that match that you're wrestling through.
Yeah. Man, I can just tell talking to you, I'd love to get coached by you. I'm an old man now, so it wouldn't work anymore. But man, I would love to have you as a coach. You mentioned two things. You said two words that I want to just pull out really quickly. You talked about control. Again, I think we often focus on things we can't control and we get overwhelmed with that, right? So speak into that for a moment. You also use the word mindset, and I love that. So first of all, talk about control, focusing on the things we can control.
Yeah, that's key. That's something that it's. I'm still learning how to do it today. You can never be perfect at it, but it's a challenge for everybody. It's you focus on what you can control. It's just choosing to put your energy into those things that are going to impact you. That you have the power over it because the things that are going to be there no matter what. Like, why worry about it? Why stress about it? No matter what you do, it's going to be there, right? So just focus on the opportunities in front of you. Like in a wrestling match, and I keep referring to wrestling, but when I was facing guys that were quicker than me, who had more experience than me, I'm not just stressing about that. It's going to be there. Yeah, I know they're going to be faster. Yeah, I know they have more experience, but what can I control right now?
Yeah.
You know what? I can do these things. I have this at my disposal. The more you do that, the more you train your mind, to focus on what you can control, to focus on the positive things, the more you're naturally just going to gravitate to doing that. And, then the stronger you become. I feel like the mind is just like any other muscle in the body. You just got to train it, and the stronger it is. But you have to force yourself at the beginning, because your mind's going to want to go to, all those things that I have no power over. I get it, but you got to bring it back. Say, no, let's, and what helps me is make an actual a list, write it out. Like, what can I control? What are my strengths? Make that list. So when your mind starts going that way, you have a visual to force your mind to focus on right here. This is the blueprint. This is the map. This is what's going to get me to where I want to go to help me to be successful.
Anthony, I want to challenge our audience to really take to heart what you just said. And me as well. I'm going to start doing that. Sit down sometimes and make a list of what can I control? What is within my control right now? And what I love about this, I just mentioned I'm a person of faith. There was a theologian and a philosopher 2,000 years ago named Paul who wrote most of the New Testament. And he talked about taking captive every thought. It's kind of the same thing you're talking about. Like, every thought that comes to your mind, grab that thought, look at it, and ask yourself, is this truth? Is this a lie? Is it, can I control this? Can I not control this? And then I love what you talked about, making that list. I'm going to start doing that. That's powerful. So speaking of mindset really quick then, I think that kind of goes along with it. But you talked about mindset, and I think that's so important. I think so much of life comes out of our mindset.
Yeah. 100%. Mindset is everything. In athletics, they're always saying it's 90% mental, 10% physical, or whatever. It's truth. Where is your mindset and the things that you're going through? You have to check that constantly. You have to reset it because just thinking in a negative light, you're you're putting all this added weight on top of you. You're draining your energy and to ultimately lead you to failure. So as you're going through your life, and it's not just about goals. It's just going through your day-to-days. It's like something negative can happen. Someone can put you in a bad mood, you know, and it's just like, okay, just take a moment after that. You know, take a deep breath, just like recheck your mindset. Like, oh, you know what? It is what it is. You know, I got the rest of the day. Or, you know what? Man, today was a bad day, but man, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. The sun's going to come up, and that's another opportunity. That's another day. And another day is a blessing.
Yeah.
You know, I think we just focus on what we don't have. We focus on the negative things. We focus on what went wrong, you know, but, you know, the more you can focus on the positives, you know, just adjust yourself, adjust the way you think about things and treat every day like an opportunity, then you'll be so surprised at how much further you'll get in life, but also how much more happy you're going to be.
Yeah.
For me, being on crutches, you know, growing up that way, everyone saw me for what I didn't have. Everyone saw me for what I couldn't do. If I saw myself in the same eyes, if I had the same mindset as them, I never would have gotten into wrestling. You know, I would have just been stuck on the crutches and been stuck in my room thinking, you know, I can't do any of these things. So, you know, don't limit your potential. Don't limit your life by just, you know, having that negative mindset. Force yourself to be positive, and that's going to open up a lot of doors for you in life.
I'm smiling so big because you are the perfect guest on this podcast. Because again, we talk about, we make our choices and eventually our choices make us. And what you just described, we make our choices about what we allow ourselves to think and what we allow ourselves to dwell on and what we allow our mindset to be. And you're talking about disciplining the mind and choosing to have an attitude to focus on what you can control and what you can do, not what you can't control and what you can't do, right? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, Anthony, this was like just a teaser for our audience. I wish we could talk for another hour. How would people get a hold of you or connect? I'm sure a lot of our audience is like, I want to know more. So they can certainly go Unstoppable. That's on what platform?
So the movie Unstoppable, it's on Amazon, and people can find me on my social medias, Instagram and Twitter. I'm at Robles125, or my website's just my name. It's AnthonyRobles.com. So
okay. Yeah, I would encourage people, if you haven't seen this movie, you have to see it. My wife and I watched it in the last month or two, I believe it was, and it was so good. You wrote a book as well. Anthony, thank you. Thanks for living a life that is really a model and motivating and encouraging and challenging for all of us. We really appreciate it. Thanks for your time today, Anthony.
I'm honored. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Well, thanks for tuning in with us for this raw conversation with Anthony Robles. If you love this episode, share it with a friend, leave a review, follow us on all social media platforms to never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on No Gray Areas.